To remove the nut on the end of the piston assembly, place a wrench on the flats of the piston holder and a wrench on the nut, and gently turn back and forth to roll the chip on the end of the deformed thread. Remove the deformed thread with a pair of snips, then file the surface flat and chamfer at a 60-degree angle all the way around. Slide the nut onto the pick, insert the pick into the hole, and slide the entire assembly off, including the clamp. And clean the threads with solvent. Remove the O-ring from the delivery holder of the Ohlins 20mm rebound piston. Slide the entire assembly onto the damper rod. Use Loctite 243 on the threads and tighten the nut. Lubricate the rebound piston and the base valve compression piston with Ohlins red grease. Install the damper rod into the cylinder tube. Install the shaft lock nut. Install the base valve piston. And reinstall the circlip. Install the cartridge assembly into the fork tube, and then install the damper rod screw into the cartridge. Clamp the fork tube assembly into the soft jaws, and tighten the damper rod screw to 20 to 30 foot-pounds. Install the dust shield with the flat side toward the slider. Install the retaining ring. Lubricate the inside and outside of the oil seal with Ohlins red grease and install with the shark tooth shaped lip towards the oil. Install the seal spacer. Install the guide bushing, and using a flat blade, pry the slider bushing into place. Put a drop of oil on the slider bushing, on the fork tube, and on the guide bushing, and install the fork tube assembly into the slider. Slide the oil seals and tap it into place with the seal driver. Install the retaining ring into the seat inside the slider. You may need a small screwdriver for this. And slide the dust seal into place. To measure the proper oil level, I use an oil level tool. If you don't have one, you can make one using a syringe from a veterinary supply store, flexible hose from the hardware store, rigid hose from the hardware store, and a piece of plastic with a hole drilled through it and a rubber grommet inserted. Then get the caliper, I use a digital one, and set the level to the manufacturer's specifications. In this case, 118 millimeters. Install the damper rod retrieval tool, fill the fork with oil, and prime the cartridge. Insert your fork oil level tool and draw out the excess oil. Reinstall the damper rod retrieval tool and gently insert the spring. The manufacturer suggests with progressive springs that the tighter windings go towards the bottom. I recommend tighter windings towards the top, so the heavier weight is towards the fork cap. Install the preload and secure with the pins spring compressor. Remove the dampener rod retrieval tool and install the fork cap. Reset the external rebound adjuster by screwing it all the way in. Tighten the jam nut against the fork cap and remove the H retainer. Release the tension on the spring. Tighten the fork cap into the slider. Reassemble the forks, slide the fork leg through the lower triple tree, and reinstall the circlip onto the fork leg and slide into place into the upper triple tree. Using a torque wrench, tighten the bolts on the upper triple clamp to 25 foot-pounds and the 2 bolts on the lower triple clamp to 22 foot-pounds. To remove the brake pads, remove these 2 pins and the pads will come right out. Clean the inside of the caliper using brake cleaner and a brush to remove the brake dust from the pistons. Blow the excess fluid out with air and apply brake lube to either the pistons or the back of the pads and to both of the pins. Insert the brake pads into the caliper and the pin into the slot, into the hole. I recommend pulling your brake pads out and cleaning the pistons every 2,500 miles. Torque the pins down to 11 to 14 foot-pounds. When installing the brake pads, make sure that they stay in place with the spring clips while you're placing the pins in. Remove it from the fork assembly to install onto the rotor. Then reassemble onto the fork assembly. Slide the axle through from the other side. Remember that this nut is left-hand thread, and you have to use the axle nut tool in your stock toolkit and torque to 41 foot-pounds. Tighten the pinch bolts to 22 foot-pounds. Install the fender, install the chin scoop, and you're ready to go.